Shalom Aleichem. This segment is brought to you by Rabbi Yehuda Shein, the administrator of Kashrus Anytime, a division of the Kosher Consumers Union, a 501c3 organization. We'll address today basically the world of chocolate. Chocolate has, which we'll explain, it has a thing, cocoa butter, but it's not dairy. It has liqueur, which is non-alcoholic. It does have the chocolate nibs are really called the meat of it, but it's not flakes. And chocolate on the end, you temper it, but it doesn't have a temper. Chocolate beans, it's a shaila on chocolate. What the bracha is, if the bracha is a 8, or the bracha is shahakal. Usually from all fruits, the bracha is ha'etz. Besides grapes, which the liquid coming out of it is hagafen, and same thing would be orange juice. If it's from oranges that are planted for orange juice, then the bracha on the orange juice would be yaitz. Most oranges in Florida, 80-90% or better, are planted for orange juice. So the bracha of Florida orange juice would be 8. On the other hand, juice from California would be really shahakal. From Brazil would also be 8, because 90% of the oranges over there are also planted for juice. But ask your local rabbi that's familiar with these things, what the bracha is, because there is a lot of these things, there is a lot like this. After the chocolate beans are removed from the trees, they're put out in the field, in the sun, to ferment, and the people take certain type of shovels and pitchforks, etc., and they keep turning it every second or third day until it gets completely fermented. It's basically the moisture builds up over there and it gets hot. It's a type of process, and after it gets fermented, they take the beans and they roast it. It depends in the type of roasting and that you do with it. Some are roasted longer, some are roasted less, on different temperatures, etc. It gives a different taste to the chocolate. After the chocolate beans or the pods basically are roasted, they're separated from the outside beans, and you take out the meat of it, and they put it into big hydraulic presses, where that press out the liquid that there is in the cocoa bean. That's called chocolate liqueur. And what's left over from the chocolate liqueur is called chocolate mass, and it's very, very because of the pressing of the hydraulic press, it becomes a very, very hard, big chunk, and they put it into a grinder that grinds it into cocoa powder, or as they call it, cacao. And the chocolate liqueur that comes out when pressing it is actually called cocoa butter. They can't get out all of the cocoa butter out of chocolate. There is still some remaining in it. And in order to get out more of it, they'll sometimes use a solvent to extract the rest of it. And you sometimes see what's called Dutch cocoa. Dutch cocoa is considerably darker cocoa. That's caused by treating it with an alkali such as calcium carbonate, and that darkens the color, which basically for certain types of cakes and other things, people want to have a darker color. When they made the milk chocolate, as we know, you can't introduce any water into a chocolate producing facility, for the very simple reason that it'll basically make the chocolate into like cement. So it's a big problem. How do you kasher chocolate company from dairy to parv, etc., which, according to the OU, you can't kasher from dairy to parv, and you can't really kasher because you can't introduce water. And kashering with cocoa butter or cocoa, which is, they want to consider it, others consider it as shar mashkin, the Hamish ones do kasher, but the OU's position was because at room temperature it is not a liquid, so it can't even be called shar mashkin, it's just plain not kasherable. So when you have chocolate that has in it an OU, you at least know that it was made on dedicated lines. But again, the OU does allow cholavakum, cholav stam, cholavakum, cholav treif, whatever else it is. So you don't want to have the dairy ones with the OU on it. But if you take the powerful ones with the OU, at least you know that it was not kosher. So some of the Hamisher ones, basically, who do want to kosher those plants, will not put on an OU on the product because the OU will not allow it. Therefore, one really should insist on getting the Hamish Hashgacha ones with an OU on it, so at least you know you don't have that issue. Now they take the cocoa powder and they mix it with sugar, vanilla, other type of things. Sugar with and sometimes they'll also mix it with um, with powdered milk because you can't use actual milk because milk is mostly water in it. So they use milk powder, and it goes through what's called a refiner. A refiner is usually consists of 5 wheels, one on top of the other one, each one spinning in the opposite direction. They don't spin, they just turn in the opposite direction, and they have very, very little teeth on it, which basically grinds the cocoa powder and sugar and the milk powder or no milk powder and the other ingredients, the vanilla. It grinds it very, very fine. The closer those wheels are together to each other, the finer your product comes out to be, and it's a much finer chocolate. And the friction, it builds up a heat because of the thing, because you're talking about basically like 2/1000 of an inch apart, the wheels one from another one, so it does cause friction, which I've clocked it at the plant under the OK in East Greenville, Pennsylvania, and the temperature came up to 160 or 165 degrees, which basically makes it, according to everybody, way above Yatzei Leathersbury, and it would basically need a libun takasha because it's absorbed dry, so you can't use a hagola, and you can't use hagola anyways because of in a chocolate plant you can't introduce any water. There was one Rav Machsher of Alpros that said that he kashed it by observing it to become glowing red, which is really almost an impossibility because those refiners are made from, not from steel, they're made from aluminum. You bring it up to red hot, basically, they melt, and even before that, because of the close tolerances of a few thousandths of an inch, 2/1000 of an inch, the thing would have bent out of shape already, and you could have thrown out the refiner in the garbage. So basically, it's very hard to believe that it was kashered with a libun. Plus, there's water inside of those rollers, which will not let you bring it up to a high temperature because the water absorbs the the heat. You can't really get it up to high temperature. The highest that I know somebody was able to get it with putting heaters onto the thing, they got it up to I think 400 degrees, something like that. Now, in the United States, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, has a standard of identity for many of the foods. Chocolate could only contain the following: cocoa, which is the cocoa powder, cocoa butter, which was squeezed out of the by the by the hydraulic presses, sugar, lecithin, and vanillin. And you can't have anything else. But if you're making milk chocolate, you could introduce milk powder. Now, lecithin will basically, if you then we'll get to that soon. In Europe and other countries, on the other hand, there's a lot of other things that they may add to what's called chocolate. So somebody should be very careful about that of getting European chocolate, etc., unless it's from a very reliable Ashgacha. Because a lot of Ashgachas in Europe are based on it's on the list. On the list means that they really didn't have access to the way it is over here in the United States, etc. It's mashgiach and achaloinus mates The company tells you till here you can go, past here you have no access, and you have to rely on what we tell you is what you have here, etc., etc. So over there they have a right to put in a lot of other things into the chocolate as well. On the other hand, when you do add other things in the United States, it's called compound chocolate. Then they have already a number of other things. They put in fat blends, they put in other things in order to have the melting temperature and the characteristics to what they want to have it. Then they put the finely ground cocoa powder, sugar, vanillin, milk powder, etc. They put it into a conch, and in the conch they also add soy lecithin for the viscosity to be whatever the viscosity they decide. And it'll be in the conch depending on the quality of the chocolate from any place from 24 hours to up to even 96 hours that it keeps on grinding and grinding and grinding, keeps on mixing it with the steel wheels, and the more it keeps on going around like that in circles and pressing it and making it finer and finer, it comes at a much, much higher grade and finer grade chocolate. There are different fat-based emulsifiers that could be used in chocolate and compound chocolate, even butter oil. Butter oil is parva butter oil and milk butter oil. Well, we spoke about that East Greenville plant. So actually, the refiner cannot be koshered, and still the OK considers it a parva plant, which it really isn't. It's because of that, because they only have one refiner, so all of the chalk really is dairy. Then they were also caught introducing in that so-called parva tank or tanks. They put in milk dairy chocolate in there, unbeknown at that time to the OK. But basically, a mashgiach caught it, and I don't know how they were able to capture it or whatever else. But they found some rabbi to give them a heter on it, how they say they called the kasher, etc. When we're talking about chocolate coated products, so there's a lot of other things that could go into those items itself, which may have serious kashrus concerns. In the conch that keeps on kneading the chocolate, basically the temperatures, because of the temperature could get up to 150 degrees, just from the residual heat. They usually don't have any added heat that they have over there to the conch. It's just plain from the buildup of heat from the thing that's keeping on um, kneading the chocolate. Then pretty much the final step in manufacturing chocolate is tempering. Tempering is that basically you want to avoid those like whitish that comes on top of chocolate. You want to have that the chocolate butter shouldn't form any crystals. So what they do is they heat it. Not they heat it. They'll usually bring it up to a temperature, cooling and heating. They'll make sure it doesn't go up above 115. They'll bring it down to 90 degrees, then back up to 94 degrees, and back down. Each company has its ways of doing it to produce that chocolate in order to do the tempering. And also it prevents the bloom that comes out sometimes on chocolate. So tempering is really, really a tremendous big chachma in getting it to be done right. And lecithin is an emulsifier, which comes from soybeans, and that's how they get it to the right consistency, rather viscosity. Pesach using lecithin is a problem because it's a soybean-based product. So what they do is for Pesach product, they have to use more cocoa butter, which is kind of considerably more expensive than lecithin. The ratio of lecithin to cocoa butter is usually, in order to get the same viscosity, it's almost 50 to 1 that you would use 50 times more cocoa butter than you would use lecithin. So it comes out to be a considerably more expensive product. That's why Pesach chocolate is considerably more expensive because of that. Some will use, instead of milk powder, they'll use milk crumb. Milk crumb is made from condensed milk, and they'll dry it in a certain way, basically on such flat beds, and that's they'll make milk crumb instead of just milk powder. One chocolate company that a mashgiach was asked to do a production over there, and they said that they're going to do it on what was the dairy line. They cleaned out completely, but they said they can't open up the pipes because the pipes are very much caked on the outside and everything. But they assured the mashgiach that everything is completely spotlessly clean and there isn't any chocolate residue in there. So the mashgiach told them, okay, I have an order for white chocolate with no marbling. That means there can't be any streaks of brown chocolate in there either. Can you basically make that? And that's when they had to admit that no, the lines are not that clean from the previous thing because there is still chocolate in there, and they had a problem making the production. So in order to clean out the lines from the lecithin for Pesach, you have to just plain run it through with a little bit of higher temperature of cocoa butter just to clean the lines. You're not kashering it because you know you're not going to do it on the milchtika line. You're going to do it on the parva line, but just you want to get rid of basically all of the lecithin that's in there, and that you could do with cocoa butter. It's basically the cleaning process more than of a kashering process because basically it's kitnius done before Pesach, etc. There was the story a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, with Shufra chocolate that they didn't, it wasn't chocolate, actually Shufra cocoa powder, which they were repacking over here in the United States, kosher Pesach, and it came from China without any hashgacha whatsoever. China is known that they adulterate everything, and one of the things they adulterate cocoa powder is with flour, etc. And they were making it over here, repacking it in the plant, and they were putting on to the packages over there products of USA. When basically it was publicized that the scandal that was going on over there, so the Hashgachas, the OK, and Rabbi Gruber basically had a meeting to discuss this issue, and the main thing was they wanted to know how the chain find out of this problem, and others had kindness that why we only notified the people a week before Pesach, when a lot of people have baked already a lot of their cakes 2-3 weeks before, and the family was basically on a hunger diet. They couldn't get any food because there's others that they say what they do is they turn over their kitchen for the 1 week of Pesach. They start cooking 2-3 weeks before, and basically people don't have no food to eat. They have to eat out because they're working, they're making the Pesach. So basically, what they have, everything all the Pesach is prepared before, so you can freezer food, no fresh food at all, and most probably you're on intravenous for 2 weeks before Pesach because the family is not going to provide any food or go out to a restaurant to eat, go to a pizza store, whatever else it is. There is no access over here to food in the house because we turned over for Pesach. Okay, hope we'll have better news next time, and Kol Tov, that's what it is now for chocolate. Enjoy your chocolate.